So, hello, welcome to Cyber Escape. I'm Val, and I go by all pronouns. And how about you?
Um, I'm Jasmine and I use she, her pronouns.
Perfect. Okay. So, before the interview, we had been talking, right, through text and stuff. And I know you're like a visual artist. And so I was wondering, like, from visual art, you kind of do a lot of like collage pieces in a way. It's kind of like broken up. And I was
Mhm.
wondering, like, how did you get your start to that? Or like what was the original when you were starting as like a professional artist? Like what was your start art style?
So before collage, I explored like a lot of different things. Like I started with drawing when I was literally a kid. I've been drawing since I could remember. I drew a lot of comics, a lot of character design, a lot of just, doodling. And then in high school, I started painting, acrylic painting, oil painting, and then I got bored of that. So then in college, I became a music photographer and documentarian. And then I made music videos. And then I got bored of that. So then I started collaging. And that was like a cool way to just tie in everything that interested me without being like super expensive or exhausting or having to depend on, you know, other people.
Yeah. So what kind of genres were you doing?
So in Miami, so in college, I was a radio DJ, and I was lucky enough to take on this local music show. It used to
Mhm.
be called Local Radiation. It's WRGP 95.3, I believe. And I was able to like kind of rebrand it, do it with someone else, and we called it the Pipeline. And every week we interviewed local bands in South Florida. And there's like actually like a lot of different things going on in South Florida. There's a lot of like hardcore, there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of indie rock, there's a lot of tropical rock, which we call trop rock. There's a lot of dance wave, chill wave, a lot of different things going on. So there's a lot of different little scenes in South Florida, but they're kind of broken up and they don't overlap that much. There's some people that come together, but it's really like individualized for some reason, but really interesting for sure.
I mean, it's kind of the same in LA. I feel like in LA, there's lots of pockets of different
Yeah.
communities that sometimes they really don't overlap, or
Yeah.
if they have,
Yeah.
I haven't been a part of it.
Yeah, it's hard to like break into it, unless you already know somebody.
Yeah. I know that one of the ways I'm dumb. I didn't like read your bio. I
You're
kind
fine.
of just like looked at all the pictures and stuff, and that's how like I was like, we really wanted you part of it because of just like all the art. But then I saw one of your posts about Namakia, and I was like, you're Peruvian. I was like, something's up because like I literally and I was like, how does she know about that? I was so defensive. Dare she? What does she know about this? And then I looked at the bio and I was like, oh my God, this is everything. I'm like, how did I mean for you, like how is like Namakia, like how are all of these like Andean, Incan kind of like names and gods, like how did they play a role in your life and how you were raised? Like how was that?
My parents never really like delved too deeply into it, but whenever my mom talked about it, about the way she grew up and where she grew up in Huachocolpa, and her first language is Quechua. And she'd always just talk to me about magic and like the magic she felt from her mom, and my grandma was a tarot card reader. I mean, of course, she didn't have like the typical Rider White deck. It was the Baraja Española.
Mhm.
There you go. And that's only like 50 cards and the imagery is very different, but it was just always like magic and thinking in relation to like nature. And I've always had like a certain like reverence for like nature and the mountains and the moon, and I've always been very attracted to like the country. And I think that comes from just being my mother's daughter, because she has such a connection to it. I didn't look into a lot of Inca mythology until like the past couple years, to be completely honest, because growing up in America, you have so much like European, Western mythology thrown at you. So I always looked at that, like Aphrodite
Yeah.
and Artemis and all of that. So I didn't understand like my roots or my heritage yet, and you know what I mean. So I didn't look to the Inca gods or goddesses for a while until I really like looked at myself and was like, oh, like this is where you come from, and
Hmm.
this is what your mother, speaks of, and like it's time to stop like rejecting all
Yeah.
of that because of the westernized like society that you've grown up in, like it's like honoring myself and
Yeah.
honoring where I come from.
Yeah. So can I ask where your mom's from again?
Huachocolpa.
Where is that?
Huachocolpa is basically like a pueblo, like
Mhm.
in the mountains. I don't know exactly like
Okay.
where,
Cool.
but I think it's near Huancayo, which is a larger region.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's so cool. For me, it was only until my dad came here. I was 9, and then he introduced me to the world of like shamanism and all of that, which is interesting because my mom and her side of the family have magic. Like they have magic. My grandpa, he is very aware of like spirits and like dead people. My mom has dreams. My uncle, like he kind of sees, the future, stuff like that.
Amazing.
But like, my dad was one who like actually goes to shamans and goes there for his healing mainly. And so I'm from like straight up Lima, like born in Lima. A lot of my family members are Lima. So I never had that indigenous kind of like culture within me. But I
Mhm.
remember as a kid always being strongly attracted to the sun. Like the
Yeah.
sun was like literally, and I did not even know about Inti like that. I mean, I had the iconography, I had the Tumi everywhere and all of this, but no one really I didn't really know that Tumi was like the Tumi. I just kind of had it everywhere in a traditional Peruvian
Yeah.
family.
Yeah.
And then just being strongly attracted to the sun and the moon and not knowing why. And it was
Yeah.
only until like, my dad and I went to the shamanism. My shaman I go to, he's not like Mexican Christian, but he does like Reiki and all of this.
Mhm.
With him, that's when I started actually going deeper and like looking more into stuff. And that's how I discovered like Inti and Mamaki and that kind of stuff. But I still have so much more to learn. Because also a lot of my friends who are like pagan, they do mainly like they don't do indigenous, what I mean? They do like kind of European paganism or the mix of stuff. And so that's what I'm learning.
I just anytime I see like magic potion bottles and just like dolls, I'm like, ooh, I need to look. You
Yeah.
know, I'm just so attracted to it. I always have been. I'm very like interested in the occult, and
Can I ask, were you born here or were you born in Peru?
I was born in Florida, so yeah, in the US.
Okay, cool. And so like how was like being raised in like a Peruvian family for you?
It was really confusing. It was just really confusing because like I said before, like I was not surrounded by like I had my family, but I went to it's South Florida, so it's primarily Caribbean and Cuban population.
Yeah.
I went to schools that were, there was like 90% Black students and then maybe like 10% Hispanic students and maybe like 3 white kids. Like I rarely met another Peruvian or another Andean there. And, that's fine, like whatever. But it also like affected like the way I saw myself. And my parents like tried to teach me Spanish when I was a kid, but I don't know why, but like as a kid, I refused it. Like I rejected it. And my dad never spoke English. Like he doesn't speak English really.
Yeah,
Like he,
neither.
he yeah, like it's fine, but like because I rejected Spanish, like I couldn't like really bond with him that much. My mom speaks 3 languages. Don't bite me. I don't know what's going on. I think he's
Racist. Let's just say that. He is Christopher Colombian down. Okay.
yes, exactly. Now that I'm an adult, I can make up for that because
Yeah.
I can choose that. I can choose to ask him questions now, and I can speak to him in Spanish now. But other than that, it was just like some Spanish music in the house. But
Yeah.
and Peruvian food. Always Peruvian food in the house.
Did
Like
your
I had
mom
that
make the
growing up.
food?
My dad would cook. My dad always cooks Peruvian food.
Love. My mom doesn't cook well, but she cooks Peruvian food whenever she does.
Yeah.
We would always go to Peruvian restaurants and stuff. But yeah, I also literally kind of the same story. I'm kind of like the surprise baby. My
Yeah.
siblings are like 10 years older.
Yes. That's
I
good.
also okay, so this is really weird. So they tried to speak both Spanish and English when I was born. I was born in Peru, but I couldn't talk until I was like 4 because I think my brain was still trying to choose what language I wanted, and I ended up choosing English. I was one of those like no sabo kids, you know.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
100% me, and it's still me now because
Yeah.
to a lot of English speakers, I sound fluent. But if you're like actually good at Spanish, I'm so not. You know,
Me too. It's
lots of
okay.
older Hispanics. I've been in Peru, and they're just like, "Girl, we can tell. We can tell you're not from here." And I'm like,
I hate it. I hate it. It's like, don't do that. It doesn't.
us, like we have our kind of culture, but at the same time, like outside of these walls, it's like not seen. So it's just a kind of weirdly funny experience.
Yes, that's exactly like what I've been trying to like verbalize for the past few years, like, and I'm so happy that we can have this conversation. I feel like I'm just like, oh my gosh, like you know exactly what I'm talking about.
I feel like we have similar feelings to the Chicano experience without actually being Chicano. You know what I mean?
I'm not super familiar with that. Can you explain to me if you have time? I would love.
Oh, I have so much time. I mean, with the Mexican community being so prevalent here, a lot of the Chicano experiences is also having like parents who speak mainly Spanish or like and them not really knowing Spanish as well, and having their parents also being like usually because there's some Hispanic like if their parents weren't already Chicano, if their parents were like first generation like immigrants, their kind of stuff was like like working and hard work and like traditional conservative kind of wear, and them being going through that motions of like wanting to express themselves more freely. And
Okay, yeah. Yes, absolutely. For sure.
but when the difference is also like if their parents were already Chicano, bless you, those things are more free for them because their parent they come from like a long line of Chicanos who have their own separate cultures. So I was like, it really depends, I guess, if your parents are immigrants or not, really.
Yeah. Yes, it makes a huge difference, like for sure. And just family, the way family is like run, I
Yeah.
guess. I don't know how to explain that, but
Yeah. And it's also like I think Peruvian problems or Peruvian ideas of when they go back to Peru, the problems are a little bit different in the sense of, at least to me, when I think of Peru and the problems with Peru, I think of like indigenous sovereignty more,
yes.
you know? And I think in other like, Central American culture, there's a lot of, like more about the government and more about separate like gangs and like the US putting fucking like, you know, walls
Yes.
there, you know, and the US intervention. But to me, I think a lot about for kind of just indigenous sovereignty, indigenous freedom, because there's not a lot of that.
There's not a lot of discussion around it, at least not, absolutely not like in the mainstream just yet, you know. It's
No.
really sad. It's really like, it's a big bummer. And like, um, I don't know, it's just really hard. Like, you know, like, especially like here, I mean, you know, like I don't, you know, I've never lived in South America. So, you know, there's so much that I don't know and I wish I
Yeah.
knew more, but you know, I live here, we live here, and it's like Turtle Island, you know, Turtle Island issues and Cherokee issues and all of that that's going on. Like, even though I don't, you know, we don't belong to Native American, like North Native American tribes at all, like I still feel for it, you know, because like it's like, well, I'm, you know, I have Native American heritage. It's not from this continent, but like I just, it's
Yeah.
just like none of it is being talked about. Like none of it is being like shown
Yeah.
in the media at all yet.
Yeah. And you know, it's very true. A lot of Native Americans from specifically like North America, a lot of their issues is very kind of similar to what's going on. No, it's 100% similar to what's happening in Native Americans for South America. Literally same thing, different continent.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's just, it's so sad. It's just really sad because it's just like everything possible is being done to just like continue to suppress them and drown them out.
Yeah.
And it's like, we were here like first. Like chill out. Like, I mean, not first. I mean, if you want to play like, if you want to be like super technical about it, you know, there's always someone else before us, but like, you know, so much of the groundwork and, you know,
Mhm. And
yeah.
you know, Pedro Castillo, who is right now fucking an indigenous guy really trying to get to presidency in Peru right now. And he's super left. And lots of people are just trying to like defame him, being like, oh, he's just this awful communist who wants to kill rich people. And it's like, bro,
That's not it. That's just like,
literally not it.
that's just like Spanish conquest stuff that still got you fucked up. Like, you know.
So sad. It's like I think Peru is almost having this. I think Peru has this Stockholm syndrome,
Yeah,
100% to the Spanish, because for someone who hates, you, I don't even think they hate it. I think they're honestly happy that the Spanish conquested them in a really weird way. Not the indigenous people, not the
no,
actual indigenous people, but the limeños. They are like happy for this
they
in a
are.
really weird way. And it's like they kind of don't want the problem to change because they know that they are at the top of the totem pole.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's
Yeah.
it's kind of like the reason behind the whole phrase, like, mejorar la raza, right? Like
Yeah.
that's, I hate that because it's bullshit. It's like,
Yeah.
no, that's just colorism and your self-hatred at work. Like it's,
Exactly. And like people hating on indigenous Peruvians. And it's like, but they were here first. You
yeah,
couldn't even be this Peruvian, because a lot of Peruvians are always so proud of being Peruvian, but they hate on the people that made them Peruvian in the first place. Like, bro, like you wouldn't even be Peruvian if it weren't for these indigenous people.
exactly. Like it's so backwards. It's literally so backwards and just like, what is up with y'all? Like, what do you mean? Like,
I
no.
don't understand the problems with giving hospitals and education to indigenous people. What
Yeah,
is the problem?
that's reparations. That's not like
100% reparations.
that's all it is. It's not, if you're afraid that like it's gonna take your space.
Then
That's just
maybe you have too much space. In my
that's
head, I'm like, maybe you have too much.
yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. Like this is just like just look at history books and be like, oh, well, I guess maybe that's why they
Yeah.
need, you know.
Also, Peru has this long line of corruption in the government,
Yeah.
heavy corruption in the government, heavy corruption of people stealing the money from the poor to do whatever they want. And it's, I mean, like, I hate to say this, but sometimes it's like a lot of times I feel like Peru doesn't want to be saved. I feel like Pedro Castillo is the solution. He's actually one of the first people who is not corrupt, who
Mhm.
actually cares about the country, and yet people hate on him for caring. It's so weird.
It's I agree with you, and it's honestly just, it just sounds like a symptom of Spanish conquest, like
Yeah,
pure. Like it's just a symptom. It's just like, like they're very good at what they did. They came and they pushed their ideals on
yeah,
the entire population and push their push their blood on them. And now everyone, like so many years later, like all these people are like stuck with this like idea that wasn't originally there.
yeah. And it just doesn't make sense. I mean, you have this, I mean, Peru is a country with also lots of immigration, you know?
Hmm.
There's so many cultures of like Asian Peruvian immigration changing the game. Like,
Yeah.
from slavery of like Black Peruvians, Afro Peruvians changing the game.
Mhm.
So the idea of another change that's helpful, like, and to still have so much hatred is like Spanish is strong
Yes.
at
Yeah.
their brainwashing. To have
Yeah.
all these years of immigration and change and interblood mingling, and still get so offended that an indigenous person wants to be president of the country that they made. Bruh.
Yo, this this whole conversation right now, like, yeah, exactly. Like, exactly. It's so crazy. Like, it boggles my mind every day to
Yeah,
think about that this, like this is happening, and it's mirrored over here too, like it's just a big mirror, and it's so sad. It's just so pisses me off, really.
I don't even know how long this interview was, but I feel like we covered so much that I'm like, it'd be good to stop now because I feel like their brains are gonna explode if we go longer. But thank you so much for the interview.
Thank you.
I mean, this is our first Peruvian we have on Cyber Escape, which thank God, because I can't be the only one here. Come
No.
on.
I'm joining the club.
Yeah, I'm not alone.
No, not anymore.
Okay, let me.
Thank you so much. Excuse my cat peeing in the background.
Hey.